Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we are diving headfirst into one of the biggest, oldest, and most mind-bending branches of philosophy out there, metaphysics. This is the field that asks the most fundamental questions you can possibly imagine about what reality even is. So let's get right into it. Now, I know when you hear the word metaphysics, your mind might jump straight to the New Age section of a bookstore, right? You're thinking crystals, auras, tarot cards, that kind of thing. And look, while that's a popular way to use the word today, it is not what philosophers are talking about. The real story of metaphysics is so much older, and it goes right to the very heart of Western philosophy. So where did this word even come from? Well, it's actually a historical accident, which is kind of funny. About a century after the great Aristotle died, an editor was trying to organize all his writings. He came across this collection of 14 books on really fundamental, abstract topics. He didn't know what to call them, so he just placed them right after Aristotle's books on nature, which were called the Physics, and he labeled them ta metaphysica, literally the ones after the physical ones. It was basically a librarian's note that just stuck, and it ended up naming an entire field of study.
Aristotle himself didn't call it metaphysics. He called it first philosophy, and he was not messing around. He wasn't interested in the day-to-day stuff that changes. He wanted to understand the absolute bedrock of reality itself. Questions like, what does it even mean for something to be? What are the ultimate causes that kicked everything off? And what are the eternal, unchanging principles of the whole universe? Heavy stuff.
And that foundation that Aristotle laid has supported centuries upon centuries of debate. So in this explainer, we're going to dive into 3 of those core problems, these ancient questions that are just as puzzling and just as relevant today as they were over 2,000 years ago. First up, the big one. And I mean the big one. It's the most basic question you could possibly ask. What does it actually mean for something to be? Sounds simple, right? Well, let me tell you, this is one of the deepest rabbit holes in all of philosophy. The ancient Greek philosopher Parmenides really got the ball rolling with this incredibly stark statement. Being is, not being is not. What he meant was, basically, what exists, exists. What doesn't exist, doesn't. Simple. He even argued that you can't truly think about something that doesn't exist, because the moment you think about it, your thought is something that exists. This idea set the absolute terms of the debate for centuries. Okay, now let's fast forward over 2,000 years to Immanuel Kant. He came along and completely flipped the script. He argued that existence isn't a property that something has, like being red or being heavy. Think of it this way. If I describe a $100 bill to you in perfect detail, its size, its color, the face on it, and then I add, oh, and it exists, I haven't actually added a new feature to the bill itself. I've just said something about its relationship to reality. For Kant, existence isn't part of the description, it's the stage the thing appears on.
And this idea just keeps building. The logician Gottlob Frege took Kant's insight and gave it this cool mathematical twist. Frege said that saying dogs exist is just a fancy shorthand way of saying the number of things that qualify as dogs is not 0. It's a total game changer, right? All of a sudden, this ancient mystery of being gets transformed into a question of logic and numbers.
And that brings us into the modern era with the 20th century philosopher W.V. Quine and his famously technical definition here. But to put it simply, he argued that we should only commit to saying something exists if our absolute best scientific theory of the world needs it to work. If science requires that thing to explain reality, well, then it exists. If not, then it doesn't. So just look at that journey we took. We went from a simple, absolute statement from an ancient Greek thinker to a super complex logical formula from a 20th century philosopher. This single question, what does it mean to be, has stayed right at the center of philosophy, evolving as our understanding of logic and language and science has evolved. Now let's shift gears from what it means for one thing to be to how lots of different things can somehow be the same. Okay, this second big problem is called the puzzle of universals. And it all starts with a really simple observation about the world around us. We see totally different things that are, in some way, the same. How is that even possible?
I mean, think about it. A stop sign, a fire truck, and a Valentine's heart. These are completely different objects, right? But we don't even hesitate to say they all share a quality, redness. So here's the question. What is this redness? Is it a real thing? And if it is, where is it?
This one question sparks a massive debate that basically splits philosophers into 2 big camps. In one corner, you've got the realists. They argue that redness is a real, abstract thing, a universal, that actually exists, separate from any particular red object.
And in the other corner, you have the nominalists. They say, no way. Redness doesn't exist at all. It's just a name, a nomen, that we humans use to group similar-looking things together.
And even among the realists who believe universals are real, the debate has been raging forever, starting with the classic teacher-student duo, Plato and Aristotle. Plato argued that universals like redness or justice exist in some perfect abstract realm, totally separate from our physical world. He called this ante res, which means prior to things. But his student, Aristotle, disagreed. He said, redness isn't floating around in some other dimension. It exists only inside the actual red objects themselves, in rebus, or in things.
Here is a fantastic way to wrap your head around this problem. Think about the novel War and Peace. What is it? Is it the physical paper and ink of the copy I have on my shelf? Well, no, because there are thousands of other copies out there. So is the novel a single, abstract, universal thing that is somehow present in all of its physical copies at the exact same time? That's the puzzle of universals in a nutshell.
Okay, on to our third and final enduring puzzle, the search for substance. This is really the quest to figure out what the most basic, fundamental, independent things in the universe really are.
Now, in philosophy, the word substance has a very specific meaning. It's not about what something is made of, like goo or matter. A philosophical substance is something that can exist all on its own without needing to be a feature of something else. It exists, as they say, in its own right.
And the easiest way to get this is to think about what isn't a substance. Take a smile. A smile can't just exist on its own, floating in midair, right? It needs a face to be on. Or a haircut. It needs a person's head. A whole is, by its very definition, just an absence in something else. All of these things are properties or features of other things. They are not substances.
Aristotle, of course, had a name for these fundamental things. He called them proteiousiai, or primary beings. For him, a substance is the ultimate subject. You can say Socrates is wise, but you can't really say wisdom is Socrates. See the difference? Socrates is the substance, wisdom is the property that belongs to him. Substances are like the coat hangers that all the properties get hung on.
But this, of course, just leads to the real question. What are the true substances? Are individual objects like you or me or this table substances? Are our minds substances? Or, as the philosopher Spinoza famously argued, is there actually only one substance, the entire universe itself, and everything else we see is just a feature of it? This question is still fiercely debated today.
So we've looked at being, universals, and substance. Three questions that are literally thousands of years old. You have to ask, why do they stick around? Why do we still care about this stuff?
Well, it's because these are not just some obscure philosophical games for people in ivory towers. These are some of the deepest possible questions we can ask about the very structure of reality. They're our best attempt to draw the ultimate map of what's real, what's fundamental, and what just depends on something else.
And here's the crucial point. How we answer, or even just lean towards answering these questions, has massive ripple effects. Your theory of universals shapes how you think about math and logic. Your theory of substance completely changes how you think about your own identity, and your theory of being is the foundation for all of science. These metaphysical questions are, quite literally, the bedrock of thought.
Which leaves us with one final big thought. After 2,500 years of the smartest people in history debating these problems, we still haven't reached a final consensus on any of them. So, are these ancient questions just unanswerable? Or, and this is the interesting part, is it possible that the deepest value isn't in finding the final answer, but in the rigorous, relentless act of asking the questions themselves? Something to chew on. Thanks for joining us today.